What's up, everybody? I'm Josh Meek, the Uber Geek. Welcome to Pretty Dece, your daily entertainment and pop culture show. Today on the show, we're going to jump back into the world of comic books and talk again about the upcoming jump that Brian Michael Bendis is going to be making to the world of DC Comics. Things are starting to become more and more clear about what he's doing and what the nature of the stories he's telling are going to be. So we know now, of course, that he's going to be working on Superman. We've known that for a little while. He's going to be working on the two main Superman titles, both Superman and Action Comics, when he comes over to DC. Of course, Bendis is the longtime, kind of 17-year writer of many different Marvel comics, so him coming to DC is a big, huge event. And the nature of his Superman stories are something people are really concerned with right now, kind of wondering what stories he's going to tell, what changes he might be making to the Man of Steel himself. We do know he's going to lead up to his Superman stories with a mini-series kind of reintroducing Superman called Man of Steel, which then leads to a new #1 for the Superman comics that he's writing. But we don't know much else about the story until then. But we might have some clues as to maybe at least some of the characters that are going to be contained therein. So with the solicitations that came out for comic books this month, they are advertising a reprint of Superman 0 Hour, which are a bunch of tie-ins to the 0 Hour event that happened many years ago that were featured in the Superman books. Now, this isn't a reprint of the 0 Hour event itself, but just the Superman tie-ins to 0 Hour. And this is especially weird because we're not seeing any other reprints for other heroes. Like, we're not seeing a Batman tie-in for 0 Hour. We're not even seeing a reprint for 0 Hour itself. These are just the Superman stories here. So it's a good indication probably that they're not reprinting these stories because of 0 Hour itself, but because of something inside these issues. And it's probably also a good hunch that they're doing this because of something that's going to be coming up in a future Superman story to remind you of something, a character, some storyline, or because people are going to suddenly become interested in something that happened in these issues. So in diving into this collection, this features 2 issues from each of the Superman comics that were running at the time. And the thing that I personally think is important here is that they feature a continual story throughout the issues featuring a new villain named Conduit. And Conduit is a very 90s-esque villain. He's very perfectly 90s. He's got these weird ropes all over him and stuff. But the origin of Conduit is super interesting. His name is Kenny Braverman, and Conduit is tied to Clark Kent very closely. He was a high school rival of Clark Kent. And of course, as the story goes, he finds out that Clark Kent is Superman, and also his childhood illnesses were because of radiation coming off of the ship that crash landed, bringing Clark to this planet. So he has a lot of reasons to hate Clark Kent, which makes him this perfect foil, perfect villain for Superman and Clark Kent both. Now, Conduit never really became, one of the top pantheon villains for Superman. He was around for just a few issues. He's mostly a blank slate now. We haven't seen him very much in the past, 15 years or so. But that is the perfect MO for a Bendis character. Look at the stuff that he did at Marvel. He liked to grab characters that, maybe hadn't been used too much, like Luke Cage, and breathe new life into them. Write them into modern stories, give them a modern voice, and make them a prominent member of some of the books that he was writing. I think that's exactly what he's going to be doing here with Conduit, with Kenny Braverman. I think he's going to kind of retell the origin story of Superman, focus on Braverman much more heavily in this version of the origin story, and then I think that Conduit is going to become one of the top-tier villains in the Bendis Superman books as far as someone to oppose Clark Kent goes. That's at least my guess for why we're seeing 0 Hour here. It could also just be a random reprint and Bendis might go off in a completely other direction, but it's certainly fun to speculate and certainly fun to reminisce about a villain like Conduit even if we never see anything come out of it. But I am anticipating Bendis' run on Superman very greatly. Really, really excited to see what he does. I know he's going to be kind of at his top-notch, writing for a new company for the first time, a new character for the first time in a long time. So I'm really excited to see where that goes. So that's going to do it for Pretty Dece for today. Thank you very much for joining me. Like Pretty Dece on Facebook at facebook.com/PrettyDeceShow. Follow me on Twitter at PrettyDeceShow and visit PrettyDeceShow.com. I'll be back tomorrow for another daily episode, but in the meantime, hit that subscribe button on the YouTube channel, on the podcast, and in the Anchor app so you never miss any of the content.